Hi, it's Janet from the Tips team. We're going to talk about Draftback, which is one of my favorite extensions. So I'm just going to go share my screen with you. Okay, so Draftback, I think of it as kind of like a 21st century view to the writing process. It's back in the old days, we used to show samples of student writing and try to guess what they did. And in Draftback, you get to see what it actually was. We're going to look at a couple of sample docs. But before we get to that, I just want to explain why I think it's cool. Lets you see your writing process in a video format, or your students can see their own writing process in a video format, or you can see your students' writing process in a video format. You can then use that to model student writing to other students, which I think is really exciting. You can also use it in order to see if somebody's plagiarized some work, because you'll see something be cut and pasted in there, all at once. So it gives you that information as well. The last reason I think it's great is it gives you access to some analytics. So with Draftback, you can see when a student wrote, how they wrote in terms of, did they write sequentially through the whole document, or are they more recursive in their writing process, how many times they revised their material, and how many students actually worked on it and when. So if you have a collaborative document going on, you can see who did how much of the work and when they did that. So fascinating extension. It's great for students, because for them, just like watching a basketball player do a good play and trying to figure out what they did to help you become better at that, it's all about the same thing, but for writing. So before you had Draftback, a student might come to you and say, oh, I did all this work, and you're like, actually, no, you plagiarized. Or before Draftback, that you might say, gee, didn't look like you did much work on this, but after Draftback, you're looking at the student's work and realize they did a ton of work, but then ended up erasing them. So the process, again, I think this is one of the things as a writing teacher that I think is the most powerful about it, is in the first part, like before Draftback, it's guessing what did the person do in order to get such a well-written piece of writing. But in Draftback, you can see exactly what that person did and when they did it in order to get that good piece of writing. So a couple of little screenshots, but we're going to skip these for now, because you'll be able to see the real thing in action. Little screenshot of the analytics to show you that you can see when, where, and who worked on the document. And last of all, in the presentation, you can see there's a link to an article by a guy called James Summers, who is the author of Draftback, where he talks in great detail, quite passionately, about how the value of creating an app like Draftback, and then he gets into the nitty-gritty of the actual coding, which if you're not a coder, that's hard. Anyway, let's look at Draftback itself. If you click the link in this presentation, which is on the front of this event, this will take you to where you can download Draftback on the App Store, at the web store. And then once you've added that extension to your Chrome, then when you're in Google Docs, you will see a little button appear at the top right of your doc that you can then use to use Draftback. So I have a couple of sample docs here. If I click onto the first student, so this student, Max, has written an essay. You'll see it's 6 pages long. And when we look at the Draftback button up in the top right, you'll see he has 5,134 revisions. This is every single keystroke of his entire essay. So if I click on that button and say that I want to play those stored revisions, I then see like a video output of his entire writing process. You'll see in the top left here that we'll see kind of like a small thumbnail of all of his writing as it continues. And you can also click this link here if you want to extract some of his process to embed in another document. In fact, I'll just play it again. And you'll see that in his writing, he's mostly writing sequentially, but there are times that he's kind of dipping back a little bit like that and then moving forward. You'll also see in Draftback that if you want, you can play at the actual speed instead of super fast. and that gives you a little bit of a different view of the writing. I'm going to put it back to fast again. You can fast forward, you can rewind in the writing. The image at the top left here is a little bit like a viewfinder, like a letterbox viewfinder that hovers over the writing. So you'll see the more that he writes here, there'll come a point where the writing up at the top disappears, and we end up focusing more on the writing at the bottom as the other runs off the page. So anyway, let's take a look at the document graphs and statistics at the top right. And this is where we can see the actual time that he wrote. So he wrote on September the 28th at 1:50, and then he didn't do any work for the next few days. But then on October the 1st, he came in and did a pretty careful scan all the way through his writing. So here we are, he started at the top of his document, worked all the way to the bottom. And here is where he came back and looked at it again. And you can see at the bottom of the page that it was Max was the person who worked on it the entire time. This is how much work he did at this time on the one day, and this is how much work he did at this time on the other day. If you have more than one student collaborating on a document, you'll see their usernames appear here as well. And if you're writing, I would think that the teacher of this class probably let the students come into class with some notes already so that the students could write their essay in class during that defined period of time, and he was able to write mostly sequentially through that. And then at another point in time, they could then come back and make revisions on their document. Let's take a look at the other sample here. So student 2. And you'll see the Draftback button will pop up in a minute. Play back the document history. We'll click in here, over 4,000 keystrokes. And you'll see with this one, the student is very, very sequential in her writing, which is why I wonder if she's got a rough copy maybe that she's worked on beforehand. And if I look at the document graphs and statistics, you'll see that she worked on Thursday, the 1st of October, and all the way through from the beginning to the end of the document with a few little ups and downs and changes along the way. And so sure enough, if I look at the bottom here, it was written in one sitting on the Thursday, October the 1st. And that's the other document. Now, let's say somebody had suddenly pasted in a big block of writing. You're going to see that there would suddenly be a drop from writing in this part of the document, a big paste, and then they're going to be writing in another part of the document below. So it's a fascinating way for people to look into their own writing. I do most of my composing online. You may find that you do too. Take a look at one of your own documents and see how that graph appears when you're moving back and forth through your document, moving sections around and so forth. So anyway, that gives you a little bit of an idea about Draftback, why it's great for students and for teachers, and hope you find it useful. Like I said, it's one of my favorite apps, so enjoy it. See you next time.